Li Mei's Sword of Destiny. Chapter 48-47. However, contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, the body repair that he thought was not difficult was now extremely difficult to do. His flesh and blood were like tender shoots growing, slowly and slowly, far from the refreshing feeling he had in the 10,000 demon realm. How is this possible? Xiaohua was a little surprised, and hurriedly urged his divine sense to explore the nearby world's origin qi. That's not right. This restriction doesn't seem to be blocking world's origin qi, and the world's origin qi within the restriction is also extremely abundant. However, the world's origin qi did not rush into Xiaohua's body like before to repair his body. Strange. Could it be that my injuries are too serious? Or my body is too strange, and this simple cultivation method can't repair it? Xiaohua thought while releasing his divine sense to carefully explore. After observing for a few days, Xiaohua finally had some understanding, and an indescribable feeling emerged from the bottom of his heart, either proud or regretful. I understand. I am originally a demigod, and my primordial spirit is entrusted to the world's origin qi. After my body was destroyed, the world's origin qi is far from enough to repair it. From my divine sense, it seems that the world's origin qi is repairing, but in fact it is the world's origin qi that is repairing. In other words, my current body is similar to Pengu's axe. In this unknown world, whether it is divine sense or the naked eye, it looks like a complete body, but in fact it is just an outline. In the upper realm, only lines can be seen, and it is not a real body. It is also because the world's origin qi is repairing the body that it is so slow. Knowing the reason for the slow repair of his body, Xiaohua was not in a hurry, and slowly urged his cultivation method to repair it. After more than 100 days, Xiaohua's body could be considered to have been repaired successfully. This barely naturally meant that he could move and he could barely use some small skills. As for the great sage of the human race, there was still a long way to go. At this time, Xiaohua wanted to continue repairing his body, but a strange situation appeared. This was because when his physical body reached a certain level, his meridians, blood vessels, bones, and other parts of his body began to show other abnormalities. It was as if a seed had sprouted there. His physical body was no longer strengthened, and these parts began to grow rapidly. However, there were many places that required heaven and earth yuan qi. These places were growing at an extremely fast rate, but it was impossible to see any embryonic form in a short period of time. Sensing this abnormality, Xiaohua's heart calmed down again. It seemed like his avatars hadn't been left behind in the void, but had been annihilated by the impact of the laws of the realm. These places must be where his avatars had been annihilated, and now they were reborn in this unknown realm. But that's not right either. Xiaohua still had some doubts. For example, the Thunderclap Immortal was comprehending the boundary laws in his lower dantian. Was he still in his lower dantian? For example, Reverend Yun's dragon body was formed from the dragon cleansing liquid in the dragon realm. If he formed another dragon body in the nameless realm now, wouldn't it be incomparable to his previous dragon body? For example, Demon Sovereign Sure was a demon spirit with a demon body. How could he condense a demon body in this nameless world? Could it be that it's not just my physical body that has been constructed by the laws of heaven and earth, but the bodies of my other avatars also need to be constructed by the laws of heaven and earth? If that's the case, they've all become bodies of the laws of heaven and earth. Can they still be considered my clones? Although there were many questions in his mind that he couldn't get the answers he wanted, as long as all his avatars were still here, Xiaohua was satisfied. He pulled his avatars out from the crack, somersaulted and landed on a rock he had chosen earlier. After that, he gave the darkness around him a quick glance, then walked towards a spot in the distance. During the past 100 days, the demon spirits had come a few more times. Needless to say, all of them came back empty-handed. In recent days they had stopped coming. It looked like even the demon spirits in the night spirit realm would lose their confidence. Actually, Xiaohua had already swept through this restriction many times before this, and he'd already understood that this restriction was actually incomplete. Moreover, it was filled with an indescribable might, and it was precisely this might that caused Xiaohua to be unable to determine exactly what sort of formation this restriction was. Because there was a flaw, and Xiaohua was still inside the formation, although Xiaohua hadn't recovered his divine ability yet, As a Dao League's formation master, Xiaohua could still easily break the formation. After walking a distance without much effort, Xiaohua reached a spot in the restrictive formation. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and grabbed at the darkness. Then, he saw that the black shadow had traces of distortion under the huge force. When Xiaohua reached out again, boom, the space around him began to collapse. Following the collapse, swish, a glaring ray of sunlight shone down, shining on Xiaohua's naked, scarred body. Ah? Xiaohua calculated for a long time, but he really didn't expect that in this unknown realm, he would see sunlight the moment he appeared. Moreover, the sunlight was very glaring. This was obviously not the night spirit realm. Since it wasn't the night spirit realm, then what realm could it be? He couldn't help but be surprised, and his eyes naturally closed. Unfortunately, before Xiaohua could use his divine sense to look around, a very rough voice came from afar. "Hey you! You actually dared to touch my banner, quickly return it." Banner? Xiaohua didn't have time to think about how he could understand the voice in the distance. He was only stunned for a moment, then he hurriedly released his divine sense. What made Xiaohua even more embarrassed was that before he could see what the banner looked like, he immediately sensed the naked body around him. Without thinking too much, he used the banner in his hand to cover his vital parts. At this moment, Xiaohua was incomparably glad. Long before he broke the restrictive formation, he changed his appearance to Zhang Xiaohua. Otherwise, wouldn't his face as a great sage of the human race be completely shattered? Before Xiaohua realized that Zhang Xiaohua was actually his original appearance, he heard swish, swish, swish. Several sounds broke through the air. In his divine sense, he actually saw 4 human cultivators surrounding him, and there was even a woman among them. At the same time, 3 strands of divine perception cautiously scanned Xiaohua's surroundings for a moment, and then that voice cried out once more. "Fellow, this place was discovered by my martial nephew earlier. We've already been here breaking through the formation for many days. Quickly return that banner to me, and I'll spare your life. Otherwise..." Not waiting for that man to finish speaking, Xiaohua very shyly replied, "Fellow Taoist, this humble Taoist is actually very willing to return this banner to fellow Taoist right now, but the question is, does this female fellow Taoist agree or not?" As Xiaohua spoke, he closed his eyes and faced the female cultivator who deliberately landed in front of him. Bah! The unknown female cultivator spat and reminded him, "Senior martial brother Hong, it's better to be careful. I heard junior apprentice brother Lu say that he tried to break the formation a few times but failed. This formation is obviously no small matter. But look, this cultivator who doesn't seem to have much cultivation base actually used a banner to break a part of the formation. I'm afraid his strength is even higher than ours." At this point, the female cultivator couldn't help but change the topic and asked, "Junior martial brother Lu, do you have extra clothes? I see that his figure is similar to yours." "What bullshit strength?" Another voice sounded again. This voice was a bit thin. If he had strength, wouldn't he transform into a crude set of clothes? That wouldn't consume much magic power. That's true. A rough voice sounded. At the same time, Xiaohua also had the same thought in his heart. That's true. Xiaohua previously only thought about transforming his appearance and didn't care about his physical body. Previously, when he just came out of the formation and faced the sunlight, he very naturally used the banner to cover his vital parts. He also didn't think that he would use magic power to transform. Now that he transformed again, he felt that it was a bit too obvious. Since he could transform, why didn't he transform earlier? If he transformed again now, wouldn't that be taking liberties with the female cultivator? What was special was that Xiaohua had already distinguished that the language these cultivators spoke was similar to Xiaoyu continent. Xiaohua also had the mood to mix with these low-level cultivators. "Senior martial brothers, don't be careless." Finally, a slightly refined voice sounded. "My disciple Yiqing happened to pass by the vicinity before the new year, and suddenly heard a strange sound. He thought that some strange treasure was born. He hurriedly rushed over to investigate. But at that time light and shadow were unceasing, and a kind of vast and enormous force that he couldn't fundamentally describe flooded the area. He couldn't even approach within 100 miles. After waiting for more than 100 days, that vast power of heaven and earth slowly dissipated again. And at this time, he discovered that the nearby mountain peaks and forests were all destroyed. It looked like a powerful magical treasure had come into being, destroying everything. However, just like what Junior Marshall Brother said before, he didn't find anything special. He only saw in this hidden place this unbreakable formation. As he spoke, the voice paused as if he was pointing at something in the distance and explained, "Senior Apprentice Brothers, you all saw it when you came here. All the traces of destruction show that if a magic treasure was born, it could only land in this formation. Therefore, when my disciple failed to break the formation, he returned to the mountain and secretly told Junior Marshall Brother." "Junior Marshall Brother Qingyu, didn't you just say all this?" That rough voice asked curiously. Saying it again, "Are you afraid that Senior Marshall Brothers will forget?" The Junior Marshall Brother named Lu Qingyu smiled bitterly and said, "Senior Marshall Brother Hong, Junior Marshall Brothers' meaning is, what if it wasn't a magic treasure that was born, but a person? Person? How could a person be born?" Senior Marshall Brother Hong scratched his head, very puzzled. However, after a short moment, he seemed to have thought of something. He looked in astonishment at Xiao Hua, who had already slowly narrowed his eyes to look at him, and even looked past him to look at the surroundings. He couldn't help but cry out, "Junior Brother Qing, you are you talking about this person?" Oh. Chapter 48-48. The female cultivator was also silent at this time. She looked at Xiao Hua up and down very quickly and said, "Junior Brother Lu is right. This cultivator doesn't seem to have any cultivation base, but his body has scars and his muscles are strong. He's much stronger than ordinary cultivators. He actually broke the formation that you couldn't break." "No, I don't believe it." Another cultivator still shook his head. How could a powerful cultivator come to this remote place? Lu Qingyu seemed to be somewhat disappointed and said in a low voice, "Senior Brother Zhang, if there isn't a powerful cultivator, who laid this formation? I say, everyone, can you give me some clothes to wear?" Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry after listening for a moment. His eyes had already adapted to the sunlight. He looked up at Lu Qingyu and asked, "The weather is very cold. You have the nerve to criticize me and let me stand in the cold wind like this?" Lu Qingyu was a tall and thin cultivator. He wore clothes similar to Confucian cultivators and looked very gentle. Sorry. Although he didn't know Xiao Hua's origin, Lu Qingyu still showed a smile on his face. As he spoke, he used his right hand to brush a ring on his left thumb and took out some clothes. He shook his hand and was about to throw them over. However, the moment the clothes left his hand, Lu Qingyu hesitated. However, he only hesitated for a moment. Lu Qingyu didn't pour magic power into the clothes, and easily threw them into Xiao Hua's hands. Oh! Xiao Hua took the clothes and suddenly felt good about Lu Qingyu. Although he didn't mind Lu Qingyu's probing, this trust made him very happy. Just as Xiao Hua shook the clothes and was about to put them on, Senior Brother Zhang said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, you just said that you would return the banner to us after getting the clothes." "Oh, did I say that?" Xiao Hua tilted his head and asked with a smile, "Why didn't you say that?" Senior Brother Hong shouted, "You just said that you would give it to us, but you were afraid that junior sister you wouldn't agree?" "Yes, this junior sister you. Would she agree?" Xiao Hua asked again. "How could junior sister you not agree?" Senior Brother Hong didn't understand the meaning behind Xiao Hua's words at all, and said anxiously, "Don't you think so, Wu Hua?" The junior martial sister named Yu Hua rolled her eyes at Senior Martial Brother Hong, then turned around and said, "Fellow Taoist, put on your clothes first." "Don't." Senior Brother Hong panicked. He clearly promised that as long as you agreed, he would give the banner to us. Seeing that Yu Hua had turned around, Xiao Hua shook his robe and casually put it on. Lu Qingyu's figure looked somewhat similar to Xiao Hua's, but in fact, he was a bit shorter. The clothes were quite awkward on Xiao Hua's body. Fortunately, Xiao Hua could already use the transformation technique at this time, and his figure became slightly shorter so he could wear it. After putting on his clothes, Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and looked around. At this moment, Xiao Hua only had one feeling. Small. The world was small, the mountain was small, the forest was small. Even the 4 cultivators in front of him were pitifully small. Alas, the demon spirits in the 10,000 demon realm are easily hundreds of feet. This Xiaohua also had a golden body of thousands of feet in the 10,000 demon realm, but here it's only about 10 feet. No wonder everything is not pleasing to the eye. Xiaohua sighed slightly, retracted his gaze, and fell on Yuhua in front of him. It was not that he was frivolous because in front of him there was only Yuhua's back. Senior Marshal Brother Hong and Lu Qingyu were on his left and right, and that Senior Marshal Brother Zhang was behind him, standing above the restriction. Yuhua's back looked a bit graceful, and she was wearing a kind of beautiful clothes, which was somewhat different from the female cultivators in the Xiaoyu continent. Her black hair was casually tied into a heart shape, and it was pinned behind her head with a hair bun, covering her snow-white neck. "Fellow Taoist, are you dressed?" Yuhua asked softly. "I'm already dressed, you can turn around," Xiaohua replied with a smile. Yuhua turned around. Bai Jing's simple and elegant appearance did not disappoint Xiaohua, and when Yuhua saw Xiaohua's gaze, her face inexplicably blushed, and her gaze flickered as she looked away, which made Xiaohua's heart skip a beat. He instantly understood that he had cultivated the secret technique of Qingqiu sect. His appearance might not have changed, but his temperament had long changed. The temptation of this big change was so great that even Fairy Xingyu said it was powerful, let alone this middle-stage gold-core female cultivator in front of him. Before, when he didn't open his eyes, Yuhua didn't feel anything special, but now, under his bright eyes, Yuhua didn't dare to look at him. Thinking of this, Xiaohua hurriedly turned around, looked at Senior Marshal Brother Hong and said, "Fellow Taoist Hong, right?" Senior Marshal Brother Hong was a man like a black tower. His body was thick and it matched his voice very well. At this time, when he heard Xiaohua's words, he couldn't help but feel close to him, and he hurriedly replied, "Yes, I'm Hong Feng." Xiaohua waved the banner in his hand and said with a smile, "You want this banner?" "Yes," Hong Feng replied without hesitation. "Junior Marshal Brother Lu hasn't been able to break this formation for many days. It must be an extremely powerful formation. Our Chanhe sect needs this kind of formation to protect our sect." Senior Marshal Brother Hong. Lu Qingyu heard Hong Feng's honest answer, and he didn't even have the slightest intention of keeping it a secret, and he couldn't help but feel anxious. Xiaohua also didn't deliberately activate his divine ability, so Hong Feng suddenly realized and hurriedly looked at Lu Qingyu. "Oh, what's wrong? There are some things that shouldn't be said, so don't say it." Senior Marshal Brother Zhang's voice sounded from behind. "Okay," Hong Feng agreed, but he looked at Xiaohua thoughtlessly and said, "Can you give this flag to us?" Xiaohua looked at this man with a smile. He had a kind of expectation in his heart. He really wanted to know if this world was the Tao Celestial Realm, if it was the Failure Immortal Alliance, and then ask about the location of the Million Meng Mountains. However, he suddenly turned around and looked at Senior Marshal Brother Zhang, who was in midair. Senior Marshal Brother Zhang was a short and thin old man. His eyes shone brightly, and he was obviously a shrewd person. However, when Xiaohua spoke, Senior Marshal Brother Zhang lost his usual shrewdness. Xiaohua asked, "What is fellow Taoist Zhang's name?" "I am Zhang Ji, a disciple of Chanhe sect's Yulan Hall." Zhang Ji was even more serious than Hong Feng, and he answered every question. Behind Xiaohua, Yuehua, and beside him Lu Qingyu were shocked. They looked at each other and couldn't help but take a few steps back. "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid." Xiaohua turned his head slightly and looked at Yuehua with a smile. "I'm just casually asking, I don't mean any harm." Yuehua couldn't help but close her eyes. Xiaohua's smile was so charming that she couldn't help but want to speak. However, Xiaohua didn't ask Yuehua, but asked Zhang Ji, "Zhang Ji, let me ask you, do you know the Failure Immortal Alliance?" "Failure Immortal Alliance?" Zhang Ji was stunned and shook his head like a rattle drum. I don't know. Hiss. Xiaohua's heart turned cold, and he hurriedly asked, "Then, is this the Tao Heaven Realm?" "Tao Heaven Realm? What is that place?" Zhang Ji didn't understand and asked curiously. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and immediately understood. Zhang Ji was only a golden core cultivator. How could he know the information about the realm? Thus he smiled and said then, "This place, oh, this continent, what is its name?" "Oh, so that's what you are asking." Zhang Ji suddenly understood and said with a smile, "This place is naturally the Yilan continent. Don't tell me you don't know?" Hearing this, Lu Qingyu's face changed dramatically. He seemed to have thought of something. He raised his hand, and his finger touched the ring on his finger. His teeth were also biting his lips, as if he was extremely vigilant. Xiaohua's heart instantly fell into an ice cellar. He had already realized the seriousness of the matter. If this Yilan continent wasn't the other side of the Dawn Rain continent, and it wasn't the Dao Heaven realm, then he would have to find the space passage to the Dawn Rain continent again. And with his current situation, how could he have enough time? Xiaohua thought for a moment and asked again, "Do you know why this place is called the Yilan continent?" The shape of the continent is like a qilin, but it's also different from a qilin, so it's called the Yilan continent. Zhang Ji answered without hesitation. Do you know the Dawn Rain continent? Xiaohua probed. Sure enough, Zhang Ji still shook his head. What about Millionming Mountains? Xiaohua didn't dare to ask this last question. I don't know. Zhang Ji shook his head, extinguishing Xiaohua's last hope. Damn it. Xiaohua couldn't help but curse. That. At this moment, Yuehua behind Xiaohua seemed to feel the disappointment in his heart and hurriedly said, I know. In the distant southeast there seems to be a place called Wuming Mountain Range. What did you say? Yuehua's words were like the sound of nature. When Xiaohua heard it, he immediately turned around with a face full of ecstasy. I read from the sex records that in the southeast direction of the Yilan continent, there's an extremely dangerous place called Wuming Mountain Range. Yuehua answered carefully, but I don't know if it's the same as Millionming Mountains. Both sides have the word Meng. Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed loudly. His body somersaulted a few times in the air before he landed and asked, Then do you know what's on the other side of Wuming Mountain Range? Seeing Xiaohua so excited, Yuehua was so excited that her nose turned red. However, she still shook her head honestly and said, I don't know what's on the other side of Wuming Mountain Range. There's no record of it in the sex records. If you want to know, you might have to go to the Fallen Immortals sect and ask. Fallen Immortals sect? Xiaohua smiled. He really wanted to ask, but he swallowed the words back down. His strength hadn't recovered yet. How could he ask? Asking too much now would only make him look timid. Thank you, Fairy Yu. I'll give this banner to you. Xiaohua smiled and raised his hand to give the banner to her. Yuehua's face turned even redder. She took the banner, bowed and said, Thank you, fellow cultivator. Chapter 48-49. Haha. Fellow Taoist is really straightforward. I like it very much. Seeing Xiaohua give the banner to Yuehua without saying a word, Hong Feng laughed and cupped his hands. I haven't asked for fellow Taoist's name yet. I'm Zhang Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands in return. At this time, he simply didn't call himself old man and didn't reveal his real name. So it's fellow Taoist Zhang. I'm sorry for not recognizing you. Lu Qingyu also smiled and cupped his hands, asking, May I know where fellow Taoist Zhang is from? Naturally from where I came from. Xiaohua didn't say it directly and covered it up. Master. Before Zhang Ji could greet him, a tall and handsome foundation establishment cultivator in the distance rushed over on a flying sword and shouted loudly, How's the situation? Did the array? Before the cultivator finished speaking, he had already noticed Xiaohua, who was still surrounded by Zhang Ji and the others. He immediately shut up and was about to turn around and escape. Just as his figure paused, he saw the banner in Yuehua's hand and the clothes on Xiaohua's body. He seemed to understand something. Although he slowed down his flying speed, he still flew over steadily. Lu Qingyu saw the cultivator coming over and a smile appeared in his eyes. He said to Xiaohua, This is the inferior disciple I just mentioned, Nu Yeqing. Then, he shouted to Nu Yeqing, Yeqing, quickly come over and greet Senior Zhang. Yes, master. Nu Yeqing hurriedly landed and respectfully saluted Xiaohua. Get up. Xiaohua raised his hand and motioned for Nu Yeqing to get up. However, he looked at Nu Yeqing's appearance and was somewhat puzzled, because when Nu Yeqing just appeared, he felt a slightly familiar aura on Nu Yeqing's body. As for what kind of aura it was, Xiaohua himself didn't know. But looking at Nu Yeqing's appearance, it was completely unfamiliar. He had never seen it before. After Nu Yeqing saluted, she curiously looked at Xiaohua and hurriedly walked to Lu Qingyu's side, whispering, Master, it seems that you've succeeded. Could it be that Senior Zhang helped you? What are you doing here? Lu Qingyu said with a frown. Our Yulan Hall has been busy these past few days. Your master and your martial uncles came out, and were afraid that the hall master would be looking for you, so we specially left you in the hall. The palace master was having a headache, so he dismissed the disciples early in the afternoon. Seeing that the palace master was fine, I slipped out. Nua Yeqing blinked her eyes. Seeing that Lu Qingyu didn't talk about the sex affairs behind Xiaohua's back, she was rather puzzled. Just as Nua Yeqing finished speaking, Zhang Ji became anxious and urged, Junior brother Lu, let's do it quickly. The hall master had a headache before noon and would flip out at night. It's our turn to have a headache. Let's hurry back. All right. Lu Qingyu nodded slightly at Xiaohua. His figure flew to the top of the restriction formation and pointed at a place with his finger. Previously I attacked here, but it didn't have any effect. Now that fellow Zhang has broken a corner of the formation, the other places should be easy to deal with. Let's start from the collapsed corner. Following Lu Qingyu's instructions, Hong Feng, Zhang Ji, and Nua Yeqing all flew over. Yuehua was not in a hurry. Instead, she flew to Xiaohua, lowered her head and said, Fellow Zhang, if we can't break the restriction formation, please help us again. This formation is very important to us. Hey, I know you can go. Xiaohua smiled slightly and didn't say much. However, just these few words made Yuehua, a Jindan stage cultivator, unable to help but feel her heart jump. Not to mention Yuehua and the other Jindan stage cultivators working together to break the formation. Xiaohua walked a few laps on the left side and released his divine sense to look at the desolate scenery around him. After thinking for a moment, he slowly walked back to the mountain peak. The celestial Tao world was a strange place for Xiaohua. Although he was somewhat sure that this celestial Tao world was the other side of the Dawn Rain continent, he couldn't be sure after all. He still had to rely on these so-called disciples of the Chan, he sect in front of him. Xiaohua returned to his original place. Nearly an hour had passed. Whether it was Zhang Ji, Lu Qingyu or even Hong Feng who had the best cultivation, their foreheads were all sweating. However, when they looked at the formation that they worked together to attack, except for the flaw that Xiaohua revealed when he took away a banner, there were no other abnormalities. Looking at the people breaking the formation, Xiaohua's heart was a little complicated. Because at this time, although he didn't use any magic, he could clearly see everyone's cultivation. It was as if everyone's cultivation was revealed in front of him without any cover. Then, Xiaohua looked at the mountain peak, the trees, and even looked up at the sky and looked down at the earth. At this time in his eyes, the whole world was completely different from before. Previously, he saw the mountain as a mountain and the water as water. Now, the mountain wasn't a mountain and the water wasn't water. It was as if everything in his eyes was a kind of outline or the existence of laws. As for Xiaohua himself, although he was different from all of this, Xiaohua believed that as long as he was willing, he could perfectly integrate with all of this, possess all of this, and control all of this. Haha, perhaps this is a sign that my primordial spirit entrusting technique has reached a higher level. Xiaohua understood and couldn't help but be secretly happy. I have entrusted my primordial spirit to the law of the realm, and I have become the law of the realm. Everything in this realm is under this law, so I can naturally control all of this. This realm seems to have been mentioned in Xianhong's discussion in the Star Moon Palace. It should be the magic of a demigod or nihility god. Xiaohua thought as he walked closer. His eyes fell on the magic array in the distance. At this time, the magic array in Xiaohua's eyes was no longer the same as before. However, he still couldn't see any clues at a glance. This was enough to show how powerful this magic array was. At this time, Nua Yeqing and Yuehua were already resting on a rock nearby. Their eyes were filled with helplessness, but more than that, there was a kind of ecstasy. The more solid the magic array was, the more powerful it was. Moreover, Yuehua had an inexplicable belief in Xiaohua. Zhang Ji and the others might not be able to break the magic array. But wasn't there still Xiaohua? Seeing that Xiaohua was walking back, Yuehua gave Nua Yeqing a slight look. Nua Yeqing shrugged her shoulders and hurriedly jumped down from the rock. She didn't use the flying technique and flew in front of Xiaohua. She said respectfully, Junior greets Senior Zhang. Haha, Xiaohua had an inexplicable good impression of Nua Yeqing. He said with a smile, One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. He senior is wise and farsighted. You can see this junior's thoughts at a glance. Nu Yeqing said with a smile, however. This junior is happy to steal something for the sect. Suddenly Xiaohua seemed to wake up. Why did he have a familiar feeling with Nu Yeqing? Nu Yeqing's shy face and cheap expression, wasn't it somewhat similar to Xiang Zhili's? And Hong Feng's simple and honest appearance, wasn't it somewhat similar to Xiang Yang's? A kind of longing and nostalgia for a long time couldn't help but surge in Xiaohua's heart. It seems that you want me to help you break the magic array? Xiaohua asked kindly. Of course. Nu Yeqing nodded her head like a chicken pecking rice. If senior can help, that would be the best. This junior will be very grateful. Well said. Xiaohua pinched his chin and asked, if I can break the magic array, what benefits will I get? The benefits are great. Nu Yeqing said casually, good wine and good meat. As long as senior likes it, this junior will give it to you. Seeing that Nu Yeqing's character was really similar to Xiang Zhili's, Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Nu Yeqing and said, Fairy, you show me the banner. Seeing Nu Yeqing being so impudent, Nu Yeqing's heart was sweating. It was just as Lu Qingyu said. She couldn't see through this unprepossessing cultivator in front of her at all. Maybe he really was a senior expert. Ordinary people would be too late to be respectful to him, so how could he joke around? However, Xiaohua didn't put on any airs. He seemed to like joking with Nu Yeqing, so Nu Yeqing's heart was relieved. When she heard Xiaohua looking at her, Nu Yeqing didn't dare to be negligent. She hurriedly responded and took out the banner from an emerald green jade bracelet on her wrist. She respectfully handed it over. Xiaohua just casually pulled out the banner and didn't take it seriously. Now that he looked at it carefully, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This banner was only a few feet in size. There was a star engraved on it. This star was surrounded by a smoke-like halo, which covered most of the banner. The rest of the flag was blank until the edge of the flag was covered in star patterns. At this time the banner was already damaged. There were traces of lightning strikes on the edges. Most of the star patterns were destroyed by the so-called lightning strikes. The star halos in the center of the banner also had dozens of lightning-like cracks, as if they were pierced by sharp swords. However, where Xiaohua's eyes fell, the fluttering banner flickered slightly, as if there was a three-legged golden crow spirit beast floating up. It was very strange. Fairy you, Xiaohua's eyes showed a strange color. He handed the banner to Nu Yeqing and said, use your magic power to see. Okay. Nu Yeqing already had a lot of trust in Xiaohua. After receiving the banner, she used her magic power. As her magic power passed, the banner emitted a faint brilliance. A three-legged golden crow appeared from the star on the banner. Not only did it block the star and star patterns, but the banner itself was also covered. However, just as the three-legged golden crow appeared, the brilliance immediately converged, revealing the broken star halos. Obviously, it was because Nu Yeqing didn't have enough magic power. This is the banner of the capital star formation, Xiaohua asserted without hesitation. He raised his eyes and carefully looked at the surrounding mountains. Sure enough, under the mess, Xiaohua found some traces of lightning tribulation. Chapter 4850. I understand now. Xiaohua thought to himself. There must be a cultivator who is undergoing the lightning tribulation here. The Dutian star array was used by that cultivator to resist the lightning tribulation. However, because I broke into the heavenly tribulation and destroyed everything, the capital sky star array was revealed. Oh, or perhaps it was because I crashed into the capital star formation that the formation was revealed, allowing Nu Yeqing to discover it. Xiaohua looked at Yu Hua and Nu Yeqing, who were looking at him expectantly, and said with a smile, ask them to stop. This is the Dutian star array. With their current cultivation, I'm afraid they can't break it. Dutian star array? Nu Yeqing was stunned. She obviously didn't know the name of this array. Yu Hua was also stunned. After a while, her eyes widened and she exclaimed, Senior, are you talking about the demon-vanquishing star array? That's the fallen immortal sect-protecting array. Xiaohua shrugged and said with a smile, I don't know about this. I know that this is the Dutian star array, and there are traces of the lightning tribulation on the flag. Maybe a cultivator used this array to set up the lightning tribulation. Before Xiaohua could finish, Yuhua couldn't help but exclaim. She covered her mouth with her hand and said, I know. Nu Yeqing was still puzzled and asked hurriedly, what does martial uncle you know? Yuhua didn't answer Nu Yeqing. Instead, she hurriedly shouted at Lu Qingyu and the others, Junior brother Lu, hurry up and stop. What's wrong? Lu Qingyu and the others were already dispirited and were about to find an excuse to stop. When they heard Yuhua's shout, they immediately flew to her side and asked hurriedly. Yuhua was excited and exclaimed, this is the fallen immortal sect's spiritual master Huang Qiong's lightning tribulation. Before Yuhua could finish, Zhang Ji exclaimed, how is that possible? Why would spiritual master Huang Qiong be here? Xiaohua smiled and said, there's nothing impossible. This place is vast and sparsely populated. Moreover, the heaven and earth essence qi is abundant. It's a good place for lightning tribulation. Heaven and earth essence qi? Nu Yeqing looked at Xiaohua strangely and asked, Senior Zhang, isn't it the world's spiritual qi? It's the same. Xiaohua says with a smile, we call the spiritual qi of heaven and earth origin qi. They're all the same. Unfortunately, Xiaohua didn't notice the strange look in Nu Yeqing's eyes. Instead, he was looking thoughtfully at the mountain range. Yuehua seemed to have noticed Xiaohua's gaze as well. She hurriedly said to Lu Qingyu, I believe junior brother Lu also knows about the fallen immortal sect's spiritual master Huang Qiong's tribulation, right? Lu Qingyu nodded. Of course, everyone in the Fengyan kingdom knows about this. Damn it! Hongfeng, who was next to him, was even more excited. He shouted, I was just a qi refinement kid back then, but I also had a very deep impression of this famous tribulation passing cultivator from the fallen immortal sect. Back then, it was said that he was one of the Mahayana cultivators most likely to transcend the tribulation in our Fengyan kingdom. No, he is the Mahayana cultivator with the highest chance of transcending the tribulation, not just one of them. Zhang Ji seemed to have heard about spiritual master Huang Qiong as well. He said, my master even used spiritual master Huang Qiong's story to lecture me. It's a pity that spiritual master Huang Qiong didn't ask the fallen immortal sect's elders to protect him when he transcended the tribulation. In the end, he disappeared without a trace. No one knows if he succeeded or not. Yuehua looked at Xiaohua, and then at the formation in the distance. She said softly, actually, as far as I know, there's another saying in the fallen immortal sect. Lu Qingyu saw that Yuehua was in a difficult position and didn't dare to continue. He continued, junior sister Yuehua is right. There's another saying that spiritual master Huang Qiong failed the tribulation and didn't even enter the tribulation passing stage. This is because after spiritual master Huang Qiong, no other Mahayana cultivator has successfully transcended the tribulation. Xiaohua, who was standing at the side, suddenly turned around and asked, why no other Mahayana cultivator has successfully transcended the tribulation? Is it because they weren't prepared enough? No, Lu Qingyu explained bitterly. It's because after spiritual master Huang Qiong transcended the tribulation, the heaven and earth spirit qi suddenly changed. What? The heaven and earth spirit qi changed? Although Xiaohua's words were filled with shock and joy, Lu Qingyu and the others were confused. Yes, Senior Zhang. Yuehua continued, the Chanha sect is a small sect. In the past 50,000 years, no disciple has been able to cultivate to the Mahayana realm. Therefore, no disciple has been able to transcend the tribulation. However, according to the news from the other sects in the Fengyan kingdom, after spiritual master Huang Qiong's lightning tribulation, every Mahayana cultivator would be struck by a crimson lightning that had never been seen in the lightning tribulation before. According to the seniors of the other sects, the crimson lightning is the holy lightning tribulation. It's a lightning tribulation that's formed to break free from the body of a demon beast. The holy lightning tribulation specifically targets the body of a demon beast. It's not something a human body can withstand. Therefore, no Mahayana cultivator has been able to transcend the holy lightning tribulation and become a tribulation passing stage cultivator. Hearing this, Xiaohua was certain that the so-called Yilan continent must be the other side of the Dawn Rain continent, which was the continent where the Defeat You Immortal Alliance was located. Then it's been a few hundred years since spiritual master Huang Qiong transcended the tribulation? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and asked again. This. Yue Hua hesitated as if she was recalling. After a moment she replied, it seems to be 600 years ago. When she said 600 years, Yue Hua's face suddenly turned red. It seemed that Xiao Hua's question had revealed her age. More than 600 years ah. Xiao Hua didn't notice Yue Hua's abnormality. Instead, he frowned and calculated in his heart. I stayed in the Dawn Rain continent for less than 100 years. After arriving at the 3 continents, I first went into seclusion in the West Sea for more than 100 years. Then I went to the Heaven Prison for more than 200 years. After that, I seem to have spent another few decades in the Star Moon Palace. After that, I went to the 10,000 Demon Realm and spent another 20 years. That's about 600 years. The time of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Cheese mutation is exactly the same as the Dawn Rain continent. Alas, if I could be born 1,000 years earlier, I might be able to cultivate to the spirit severing stage. Now it's difficult again. When Xiao Hua was thinking, Hong Feng suddenly sighed. Xiao Hua had a plan in his heart and was in a good mood. He looked at Hong Feng and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, Hong's nature is simple and honest. It's a good material for cultivation. Although your cultivation is shallow now, as long as you cultivate diligently, you can reach the spirit-severing stage. It's even possible for you to step into the void refinement or body integration stage." Senior Zhang, there's something you don't know. Hearing Yue Hua call Xiao Hua Senior Zhang, Hong Feng didn't dare to neglect and said with a wry smile, "If it was before the spiritual qi of heaven and earth changed, I would have such confidence. But now that the world has changed, even condensing a nascent soul requires a thunder tribulation. Which human cultivator dares to say that he can definitely pass this abnormal thunder tribulation?" "Ah, is that so?" Xiao Hua was surprised and asked curiously, "Could it be that there is a thunder tribulation after the gold core stage?" "It's more than just a thunder tribulation. Although this thunder tribulation is not a holy thunder tribulation, it is still a demonic beast's thunder tribulation. Even if we are a body cultivator, it is impossible for us to pass this kind of thunder tribulation." Lu Qingyu complained. Xiao Hua touched his nose and said with a wry smile, "This is troublesome." Needless to say, the Dawn Rain continent was also like this. Xiao Hua originally wanted to place Li Xiang, Xiong Yi and the others in Dawn Rain continent, but since the spiritual energy of heaven and earth mutated and gave birth to such a strange lightning tribulation, Li Xiang, Xiong Yi and the others, how could they smoothly cultivate into the spirit-severing stage? The 2 of them, and even the disciples of the soaring dragon mountain range of the Fortune Gate were not bad, but they were not heaven-defying. The disciples of the Tao Gate of the Yilin continent were unable to pass the nascent soul tribulation. If they couldn't pass the thunder tribulation, they would definitely not be able to pass it. Hearing that the topic had gone too far, Yu Hua, whose face was still red, hurriedly raised her voice and said, "Junior brother Lu, Senior Zhang just said that this is the flag of the demon-subduing star formation. If I'm not wrong, the Royal Dome spiritual master's remains should be inside the formation. See." Lu Qingyu sucked in a breath of cold air, and a trace of panic appeared in his eyes. He looked at Zhang Ji, who was also at a loss. On the other hand, Hong Feng was ecstatic and shouted, "That's great, that's great. Regardless of whether the Royal Dome spiritual master died or went missing, the things he left behind must be incomparably precious. If we bring it back to the sect, it will definitely bring benefits to the sect. Not to mention the Royal Dome spiritual master's remains. Even if we bring the flag of the demon-subduing star formation back to the sect, we will be able to." Hong Feng looked at Zhang Ji with a puzzled expression and asked, "Junior brother Zhang Yu, why are you looking at me?" "Senior brother Hong." Zhang Ji smiled bitterly and said, "Since we know that this is the place where the Royal Dome spiritual master underwent his thunder tribulation, we can't casually touch a single strand of grass here. In the past, the fallen immortal sect paid a huge price to find the whereabouts of the Royal Dome spiritual master. Not only did they want to confirm whether the Royal Dome spiritual master underwent his thunder tribulation, but more importantly, the demon-subduing star formation, and the things that the Royal Dome spiritual master left behind. Tell me, if we break the demon-vanquishing star formation and take the things inside, The fallen immortal sect will definitely wipe us out from the Fengyan kingdom. That's true. Hongfeng laughed and touched his head. He asked, what about now? It's very simple. Lu Qingyu shrugged and replied, we will rush back to the sect now and ask the sect leader to make a decision. If nothing goes wrong, the sect leader will send a disciple to deliver the flag to the fallen immortal sect at night. Moreover, the sect leader will definitely send a disciple here to protect this place until the fallen immortal sect's disciple arrives. Zhang Ji added on. As for Yuehua, she looked at Xiaohua worriedly. She was afraid that Xiaohua would suddenly break the formation. Chapter 4851. Of course, Xiaohua wanted to see what was inside the array, but after thinking about it, he didn't find anything special when he was repairing his body. Those big and small square things were definitely not rocks but things used to set up the array. However, these things weren't made of special materials, so they didn't attract Xiaohua's attention at all. Forget it, it's just the capital star array, this Xiao can set it up casually. Moreover, this Xiao's strength has already reached the 10th grade. Why would I be greedy for these small advantages? Thinking of this, Xiaohua smiled and said, Fairy, you don't worry, these things can't be seen in my eyes. Sigh, what a pity about these array flags. Hongfeng was still reluctant and looked into the distance. Without waiting for Hongfeng to finish speaking, No Yeqing immediately smiled and said, Senior Zhang, where are you going? If you have time, why don't you come to my Chanhe sect? My sect master is very hospitable, and he might have something that Senior wants to know. Yuhua's eyes lit up, and she immediately came to a realization. Since Xiaohua could see that these were the array flags of the demon subduing star array, he should know the method of setting up the demon subduing star array. At the very least, he should be able to give some pointers, right? Senior. Yuhua glanced at Lu Qingyu and Zhang Ji, and the three of them bowed at the same time and said, Junior has offended you previously, please forgive us. Junior would like to invite Senior to Xingyun Ridge, so that we can properly apologize to Senior. Yes. Hongfeng also realized and hurriedly bowed and said, My Chanhe sect protection array is too weak. We also need Senior Zhang's pointers. Yuhua's face immediately turned red. Their little thoughts were exposed by Hongfeng. Xiaohua looked at Yuhua's shyness and turned to ask Nu Yeqing. Does your Chanhe sect have a map of the Yilin continent? Nu Yeqing said cheerfully, Senior, this junior has only seen the map of the Fengyan country in the sect, but the sect master definitely has it. If the sect master doesn't have it, my Chanhe sect's disciples will find a way to help Senior find it. My Chanhe sect has hundreds of thousands of disciples. It's definitely more convenient than Senior finding it alone. Since that's the case, let's go. Xiaohua said with a smile. Senior, please. Nu Yeqing was overjoyed and raised her hand to invite Xiaohua to go first. Are there no flying boats? Xiaohua looked at Lu Qingyu and the others strangely. They were all golden core cultivators. It was impossible that they didn't even have a flying magic tool, right? Yes. Lu Qingyu hurriedly took out a palm-sized magic tool from the ring and activated it with his magic power. It turned into a flying boat that was more than 100 feet in size. After inviting Xiaohua to board, he explained, Junior sneaked out and didn't dare to make a big fuss, so we didn't want to use a flying boat. It's too late to hide anything now. Yuehua smiled. She knew that the array flag was very important to the fallen immortal sect. If the Chanhe sect returned the array flag to the fallen immortal sect, they would definitely be on good terms with the fallen immortal sect. This was a great merit, and they would definitely be rewarded. The place that spiritual master Huang Qiong chose to transcend the tribulation was very remote. Lu Qingyu didn't know why Nu Yeqing passed by this place. In short, Lu Qingyu steered the flying boat and flew for half a day. When night fell, they flew to the location of a teleportation array. After passing through the teleportation array, they flew for the time it took to burn an incense stick before arriving at a place with undulating mountain ranges. There were green pine trees on the left side of the mountain peaks. Waves of heaven and earth spirit chi floated in the wind like clouds. The patrolling disciples in armor shuttled through the clouds. Xiaohua smiled. After so many years, he finally arrived at the place where the Taoist cultivators gathered. When the flying boat landed, a group of Foundation establishment cultivators had already flown over to investigate. When they saw Lu Qingyu and the others, they bowed and saluted. but their eyes were fixed on Xiaohua. Before Lu Qingyu and the others spoke, Nu Yeqing introduced, "This is Senior Zhang. He's a distinguished guest invited by my master. If possible, please send a message to the sect leader." The leading disciple was a little hesitant. "Junior brother Nu, it's not that I don't want to send a message, but these few days. Without waiting for the disciple to finish speaking, whoosh. A light shadow flew out from the mountain range and flew towards the left side of Xiaohua and the others. However, before the light shadow passed by, a divine sense swept over. Seeing that it was Lu Qingyu and the others, it immediately turned around and landed in a moment. It was a rather old late gold core stage old man. The old man hurriedly shouted, "Martial nephew Lu, why are you still here? The sect leader is furious. Why aren't you going over?" As he spoke, the old man's gaze fell on Xiaohua again. He asked curiously, "Who is this?" Lu Qingyu hurriedly bowed and said, "Greetings, Martial Uncle Hu. This is Senior Zhang, whom I met in the Wild West mountain range. He has some important matters to discuss with the sect leader. Haha, this old man is Humubai. Greetings, fellow Taoist Zhang." The old man with the surname Hu smiled and cupped his hands. "I'm Zhang Xiaohua." Xiaohua also smiled and politely returned the greeting. Humubai couldn't see through Xiaohua's cultivation, and Xiaohua's name was unfamiliar to him. In particular, since Xiaohua came with Lu Qingyu, he probably wasn't a particularly powerful cultivator. Therefore, after greeting Xiaohua, Humubai said to Lu Qingyu, "If Martial Nephew wants to introduce fellow Taoist Zhang, it'd be better to wait a few days. Recently, the sect leader has lost his temper several times because of the matter in the Yulan Hall. Now, the sect leader can't take it anymore. He wants me to go to the outer sect and urge them to hurry up." Yes, this junior understands. Lu Qingyu knew that Humubai meant well. He smiled and said, "However, Senior Zhang's matter is very important. This junior doesn't dare to delay. Well, since that's the case, go to the Yulan Hall first and ask the sect leader to take you there." Humubai nodded, cupped his hands at Xiaohua and left. See, not far away, the patrolling disciple also said, "Even Grandmaster Hu asked you to go to the Yulan Hall first. Don't make me send a message." "Alright." Nu Yeqing was a little helpless. He said in a low voice, "Senior, we're really too slow." It's fine. Xiaohua liked to keep a low profile the most and waved his hand nonchalantly. When Yuehua saw this, she secretly liked it. She had also never seen such a secretive cultivator. However, when she saw that Xiaohua's clothes were not very suitable for him, she couldn't help but think of something else. After flying past the patrolling disciples of the Chanhe sect, it didn't take long for them to arrive in front of a platform that was about a mile wide. There was a huge white jade door on the platform. The words Chanhe sect were written on it in a flamboyant style. There was a faint fluctuation of magic power on the door. The fluctuation was like water ripples that spread in all directions. It landed near the door and connected with other fluctuations, protecting the mountain range behind the white jade door. The Yulan Hall was one of the many halls on the mountain range. Xiaohua landed in front of the mountain range with Yuehua and the others. He didn't fly directly into the hall. Instead, he followed a sky ladder that shone with a fluorescent light in the night. He seemed to be walking slowly, but in fact he was climbing very quickly. "Senior Zhang." Lu Qingyu had already spoken. He said in a low voice, "In my Chanhe sect, you can't fly directly to the main peak if you're not in the nascent soul realm. I don't know what realm you're in." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, It's fine. I don't like etiquette and ceremony. A guest should follow the host." That's good. When Lu Qingyu heard this, he felt like he was in a dream. He couldn't believe his luck that he could meet such an expert who didn't put on airs. Of course, while Lu Qingyu believed in Xiaohua, Zhang Ji muttered to himself. His confidence had been shaken, and he felt that Xiaohua might be a liar. However, this thought only flashed through Zhang Ji's mind. Regardless of whether Xiaohua was really a swindler or not, since Xiaohua could take out the capital star array's array flag from the array, his strength was not something that Zhang Ji could reach. Moreover, Xiaohua dared to come to the Chanhe sect and dared to face the head of the Chanhe sect. Xiaohua couldn't be a liar. While they were talking, they had almost reached the end of the sky ladder. Although there were some disciples flying low between the palaces on the mountain peak, which looked a little lively. These people didn't make any big movements. Even the Tao sect cultivators who weren't afraid of the night liked the silence of the night. Damn it! But in this silence, a hoarse and angry voice came into Xiao Hua's ears. This is already the 17th batch, right? Why? Why haven't even 10 suitable disciples been chosen? If so, how many disciples can my Chanhe sect recruit this year? If we can't even find suitable disciples, why does the Chanhe sect want my Yulan Hall? It's better to close the door early and go to other places. Oh, Xiao Hua was taken aback. His divine sense swept in the direction of the voice. Before he could find the location of the Yulan Palace, he had already seen more than 1,000 children around the age of 5 in the square in front of the palace. These children were not wearing much and were shivering in the night wind. However, each and every one of their small faces carried a kind of tenacity and expectation as they looked at the palace. This was a hall that was more than 1,000 feet high. Its style was simple and unadorned, which was very different from the Xiaoyu continent. There was a plaque above the door. This plaque was like a magnolia flower, and the 3 big words in the middle were, Yulan Hall. There was no restriction on the door. A ray of light like Minghua stone penetrated through the door and fell to the ground, shining on several disciples in front of the door. Seeing Niu Yecheng sneaking over stealthily, the disciple guarding the door hurriedly covered his mouth with his finger and motioned Niu Yecheng to be quiet. Then he turned to look inside the hall and gently waved his right hand, indicating Niu Yecheng to leave quickly. Unfortunately, Niu Yecheng shrugged and looked helpless. She continued to approach slowly, which made the disciple feel helpless. Sure enough, just as Niu Yecheng entered the hall, the voice inside shouted again, "Who is it? Don't you see that the disciples are being tested in the Yulan Hall?" Chapter 4852. Disciple Niu Yecheng greets Palace Master. Niu Yecheng stuck out her tongue and hurriedly bowed at the door. "Humph, you dare to come back. Where's your master? Why haven't I seen him for a day?" "Hehe, congratulations Palace Master, congratulations Palace Master." Behind Niu Yecheng, Lu Qingyu hurriedly flew out and bowed respectfully with a smile on his face. "Congratulations, my ass." The voice inside said angrily, "I'm here supervising the array, where did you all go? If you don't explain it clearly today, I'll kick you out of Yulan Hall and down to Xingyun Ridge." "Palace Master, you've wronged me," Lu Qingyu cried. "I know that I'm afraid that I won't be able to complete the sect master's strict order this year, so I've been trying to find a way out. Today I've returned with a full load, why don't you reward me?" "Ah, you actually found 300 suitable disciples?" While they were speaking, a tall and sturdy old man's figure flashed and landed outside the door of the Yulan Palace. He grabbed Lu Qingyu's arm and peered out of the palace. This old man was dark and tall, like a general who had been on the battlefield. He was even more frightening than Hong Feng. Unfortunately, outside the hall, other than those disciples of Holy, there was only Xiao Hua and the others standing not far away. Where did the disciples come from? Damn it! The old man was a little angry and was about to curse. Yu Hua hurriedly shook the banner and handed it to the old man, saying, "Palace Master Xia, look, what is this?" "What is this?" The old man was stunned and asked curiously, "Are the 300 disciples in this banner?" "Palace Master, take a closer look." At this moment, of course, Zhang Ji was indispensable. He hurriedly stepped forward and reminded, "Look at this banner. What kind of array is this?" The old man looked for a while and shook his head. "I can't see it." As he spoke, the old man's lightning-like eyes swept towards Xiao Hua, who was accompanying Hong Feng. Xiao Hua looked at the middle-stage nascent soul old man, smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "I Zhang Xiaohua greets Palace Master Xia. What's going on?" Palace Master Xia frowned and looked at Lu Qingyu. Lu Qingyu smiled and said, "Palace Master, please take a look at this flag and think about the Fallen Immortal Sect's protective mountain array. Fallen Immortal Sect's Devil Subduing Star Formation?" Palace Master Xia seemed to have realized something. Looking at the flag, he asked curiously, "This is the array flag of the Devil Subduing Star Heavenly Array? Where did you get it?" "We don't have that ability." Yuehua smiled. "This flag was given to us by Senior Zhang. It's like this. Without waiting for Yuehua to finish her explanation, Palace Master Xia immediately understood something when she mentioned the Demon Subduing Star Formation. His body trembled slightly, and his eyes flashed with ecstasy. Roar! Palace Lord Xia let out a long howl and cupped his hands at the sky. Thank the heavens for giving my Chanha sect a way to survive. Then he bowed to Xiaohua and said, I am Xiafeng. Thank you for your righteous act, fellow Taoist Zhang. I don't dare. Xiaohua hurriedly wanted to raise his hand, but Xiafeng had already bowed. Xiaohua could only say modestly, this is all thanks to Nu Yeqing. If he didn't find that place, how could I come here? This is an important matter. We can't delay it any longer. Fellow Taoist Zhang. Xiafeng stood up and hurriedly pulled Xiaohua. He was about to soar into the sky, but he still said, please come with me to see the sect leader. However, when Xiafeng reached out his hand, he hesitated. After thinking for a while, he said with a smile, I remember that the sect leader seems to be having a meeting with the elders in the Clear Heart Palace. He said that unless it's an emergency, no one can disturb him. I'm afraid that I'll have to wait until dawn if I go there. That's really disrespectful to fellow Taoist Zhang. How about this, fellow Taoist Zhang? You stay in my Yulan Palace and let Qing Yu and the others accompany you. After I report to the sect leader, I'll let the sect leader come to welcome you personally. How about that? That's fine. Go and do your work. Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand, indicating that Xiafeng should go quickly. Although the Chanha sect was a small sect in Xiaohua's eyes, the entire sect was actually not inferior to the Imperial Thunder sect. He was very interested to see what the Chanha sect was like. Xiafeng cupped his hands and activated the earth to escape. Xiaohua looked at Xiafeng's back with a thoughtful expression. This was because he didn't need to use any magic to see the flaws in Xiafeng's cultivation. At the same time, he also saw that Xiafeng had been wandering around the gap between the early and middle stages of the nascent soul stage for a long time. If he couldn't break through within 10 years, it was unlikely that he would be able to reach the severed soul stage in this life. Hall Master. Before Xiaohua could withdraw his gaze, another voice sounded out from within the Magnolia Hall, and then another young cultivator with a pale complexion and a beard charged out and shouted towards the sky. Unfortunately, Xiafeng didn't pay attention to him at all and disappeared into a group of palaces at the top of the mountain. Where did sect leader Xia go? The young man was also an early nascent soul stage cultivator. He looked at Lu Qingyu and the others in confusion and asked. Lu Qingyu didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly bowed and said, Vice Sect Leader Yun, Sect Leader Xia went to the Mingxin Palace for something. What's the matter? Why are you so reckless? Sect Leader told us not to disturb him. Vice Sect Leader Yun was a little unhappy. He looked at Xiaohua and seemed to be waiting for Xiaohua to come over and greet him. Xiaohua only smiled and nodded at him. He didn't mean to come forward and greet him. Yuhua hurriedly smiled and said, It's like this, Vice Sect Leader Yun. However, before she finished speaking, Vice Sect Leader Yun waved his hand impatiently and said, No need to report. Since Sect Leader Xia already knows, let him do it. Come in quickly. Tonight, we must find 20 children with good aptitude from these children. 20? Hong Feng exclaimed. Vice Sect Leader Yun, how is this possible? We have already identified tens of thousands of children before, but we didn't find more than 10. How can we find 20 now? Why are you looking at me? Vice Sect Leader Yun was even more unhappy. He scolded. It's not like you don't know the situation of the sect. These children are my Chanhe sects. At this point, Vice Sect Leader Yun glanced at Xiaohua vigilantly. He swallowed his words and changed his words anyway. This is the sect leader's order. Quickly follow the order. That after speaking, Vice Sect Leader Yun turned and entered the Yulan Palace. He indeed looked very anxious. Yes, Vice Sect Leader Yun. Hong Feng and the others didn't dare to be negligent. They hurriedly bowed and greeted. Senior, please don't blame him. Yuhua said in a low voice very considerately. Usually, Sect Leader Xia is impatient, and Vice Sect Leader Yun is the one to fill in the gaps. Today, my Chanhe sect is indeed in some trouble, so Vice Sect Leader Yun is also anxious. Why would Xiaohua care about this? He waved his hand and said, It's okay, I'm just a passerby. Oh right, what's the problem with Chanhe sect? Yuhua forced a smile and said, Senior already said that you're just a passerby. We don't need to trouble you with these things. Then Yuhua ordered Nu Yeqing. Yeqing quickly asked the disciples on night duty to prepare some spirit fruits and spirit wine. Yes, yes. Lu Qingyu also came to his senses and shouted, Yeqing, you stay here and accompany Senior Zhang. We'll go to the hall to help first. Yes, master. Nu Yeqing rolled her eyes and was about to fly away. Xiaohua pulled her back and waved his hand. No need, you all go to the hall to do your work. Oh right, can I enter the Yulan Palace? I want to see what you're doing. It's okay. Without waiting for Lu Qingyu to speak, Nu Yeqing shouted. Didn't the sect leader say it clearly just now? Senior, please rest in the hall. Senior, feel free to enter. Lu Qingyu was a little hesitant. After all, Xiaofeng only asked Xiaohua to wait in the Yulan Palace. He didn't say that Xiaohua could enter the Yulan Palace. However, when he saw Nu Yeqing winking at him, he smiled bitterly in his heart. This disciple of his had been clever since he was young. He was very cunning and often made strange things. His actions must have some profound meaning. Lu Qingyu smiled and said, in that case, Senior, please come in. How could Xiaohua not see Nu Yeqing's funny face? However, the more he looked, the more he liked it. It was as if he was looking at Xiang Zhili in the past. Therefore, he nodded and stepped into the Yulan Palace. As soon as Xiaohua entered, he immediately felt a gaze. Without a doubt, it was Deputy Sect Leader Yun. However, although there was some hostility in Deputy Sect Leader Yun's eyes, he didn't linger on Xiaohua. Oh, how lively! Xiaohua didn't pay attention to the strange gaze. He stood at the door and looked into the depths of the hall. Unconsciously, a smile appeared on his face as he spoke. The hall was several li in size. There were 81 huge pillars supporting the roof of the hall. Those pillars were not ordinary dragon pillars. Instead, they were carved with the petals of magnolia flowers. A faint fluorescent light was emitted from the jade pillars. It was as if 81 huge magnolia flowers were blooming in the hall. Xiaohua sighed with emotion inside the palace hall. It was very lively and was divided into a dozen or so regions. Each region had over 100 children. Although these children were standing respectfully, they were still children after all. They couldn't help but whisper, and when the whispers increased, it became noisy. Around each area, there were a few aura refining disciples walking around. They seemed to be maintaining order. However, because they were too tired, they didn't stop the children from whispering and yawning. In front of each area, there were 2 or 3 children sitting cross-legged. There were a few foundation building disciples around the children. Some of them were holding ruler-like magic tools and pointing them at the children's foreheads. Some of them were holding different kinds of talismans. They activated their magic power and stuck them between the children's eyebrows. At the head of the hall was naturally the high platform. At this time, Deputy Sect Leader Yun was walking around on the high platform. His eyes were looking from one area to another, and his eyes were filled with anxiety. Around the high platform, there were a few golden core cultivators guarding various places. They were also anxiously looking at the disciples who were appraising.